There is one detail in this story that most people miss the first time they hear it. It is not the monster. It is not the cult. It is not the forest. It is something much smaller. If you notice it before the end, you will understand what happened to the people of Harlow Creek long before I did. Pay attention to what gets left on the porch. My brother's boots were on the porch the morning after they found his body. Not at the trailhead where he disappeared. Not at the ranger station where they'd last logged his permit. On our porch, laces tied, mud still wet, pointing inward, toward the door, the way you leave shoes when you're about to go inside. My father picked them up without a word and set them inside the hall closet. I stood in the doorway and watched him do it. Neither of us mentioned that the closet hadn't been opened in 6 years. Neither of us mentioned the smell that came out. Pine resin. Loam. Something older beneath it. Something animal. My father closed the closet door and went to put on coffee, and I sat at the kitchen table and looked at the wall, and the morning light came through the window exactly the way it always had. And outside the tree line was exactly where it had always been, 50 yards from the back fence, green and absolute, and watching. My name is Cal Morrow. I am 34 years old. My brother's name was Daniel. He went into the Harlow Creek backcountry on a Tuesday in September 1997, and he did not come back out. That is not the strange part. People disappear in the Harlow Creek backcountry. They have always disappeared there. The old-timers in town, the men who drank at the Meridian Tap on Thursday nights and spoke slowly, with the particular deliberateness of people who have chosen their words very carefully for a very long time. They did not call it getting lost. They called it getting taken. Not by bears. Not by falls. They said it the way you say something you have decided not to explain further. Taken. And they'd look at the window, at the dark tree line across the road, and then back at their drinks. I was 28 when Daniel died. I had lived in Harlow Creek my entire life, and I thought I knew what the old men meant. I thought it was folklore, something to keep kids out of the woods. I didn't know anything. Daniel was 22. He was a forestry student at Western Washington, and he'd come home for a week to do what he called an independent survey, measuring canopy coverage in the old-growth sections north of the Harlow drainage. He had a permit. He had GPS equipment, a satellite locator, a PLB beacon. He had everything you're supposed to have. He told me he'd be back by Friday. He texted me Thursday night. One message. Found something. Call you tomorrow. That was the last thing I ever received from him. The search lasted 11 days. They found his GPS unit, his pack, his canteen, full, his field notebook. And this is the thing I've never been able to stop thinking about. Open to a page that contained nothing but a single phrase, written over and over, filling the entire page in progressively smaller handwriting. 297 years. 297 years. 297 years. The coroner's report said, probable fall, probable bear encounter, exposure. They found what they found, and what they found was enough to close the case. And I won't describe it here, except to say that the search team lead, a veteran named Duval, quit his position with Greylock County Search and Rescue the following week, and moved with his family to Reno, and has not spoken publicly about what they found. I stayed. I always stay. That's the thing about me that mattered, and that I didn't understand until much later. I stay even when staying is wrong. I stayed after my mother left when I was 15. I stayed after every job I should have quit. I stayed in Harlow Creek because the alternative was admitting that Daniel had gone into the forest and the forest had taken him, and I was still here, and there was no logic in that. And if I left, the absence of logic would follow me. So I stayed. And I started asking questions. October 14th, 1997. 3 weeks after Daniel gone. Started at the county records office today. Asked to see disappearance reports filed in the Harlow backcountry area, 1970 to present. The clerk, a woman named Paulette, chews spearmint gum, has a jar of pens she's sorted by color. Told me the records were available, but that some files had been moved to storage. She said it very naturally, the way people say things they've been told to say. I counted 14 separate incident reports, 14 in 27 years, all listed as probable accident or exposure, all in the same area, north of the drainage, roughly within a 2-mile radius of a geological survey marker designated HCK7. I asked Paulette how many of those had produced a recovered body. She counted the pens in her jar for a moment. Blue pen, red pen, green pen. 4, she said. I drove home. On the porch, nothing. I check every morning now. I don't know what I'm checking for. November 2nd, 1997. Talked to Pete Galloway today. He was in the Meridian when I came in, sitting in his usual corner, one of the old-timers who knew my father when my father still came to things. Pete worked the mill for 30 years and has hands like 2 pieces of oak furniture. I asked him about HCK7, the geological marker. He put his beer down very carefully. That's the groves, he said. I asked what the groves were. He looked at me for a long time. You're Cal Morrow, he said. I knew your brother. I know. Then you know you shouldn't be asking. I told him that was exactly why I was asking. He finished his beer. He got up and put on his coat. At the door, he stopped and said, without turning around, the groves are where the old ones are, the trees that were here before, the ones the logging company wouldn't cut. He paused. Wouldn't. Not couldn't. Wouldn't. Then he left. I sat with that word for a while. Wouldn't. I looked it up when I got home. The Harlow Creek Timber Cooperative, operating from 1921 to 1959, maintained a formal exclusion zone around a stand of old-growth Douglas fir and western red cedar in the northern backcountry. The exclusion zone was 340 acres, the reason listed in their own internal records. Soil instability, extraction cost prohibitive. The oldest tree I found in the state forestry records for that area, 297 years. Daniel wrote that number until his hand wouldn't stop writing it. November 29th, 1997. Found something in Daniel's room today. Shouldn't have been in there. Dad has kept it exactly as it was, and I respect that. And I violated it anyway, because I am who I am. Behind his desk, tacked to the wall underneath a geology map, a photograph. A woman standing in a tree. Not against the tree. Not near the tree. In it. Standing in the fork of a massive cedar trunk. But her position is wrong. Too high. No branches supporting her. Her arms at her sides. Her face turned away. The photograph is grainy, clearly taken from a distance. The bark of the tree is visible through her. Or I think it is. The photograph quality is too poor to be certain. The photograph had no date. On the back, in Daniel's handwriting. She was there both days. She doesn't move. Does she know? I don't know who she is. I don't know who she was asking about. I put the photograph in my jacket pocket. I've looked at it maybe 40 times today. I can't stop trying to see her face. A woman standing in a tree, arms at her sides, face turned away. bark visible through her body, or the photograph is simply poor, or the distance is too great to tell. She is standing where no one can stand. The Groves, North Face, 1997. Photographer unknown. Greylock County Sheriff's Department, Missing Persons Division. Case number GCMP 1997-041. Subject: Morrow, Daniel James. Age 22. Male. White. Last known. Location: Harlow Creek. Backcountry, Section 14N, approximately 3.2 miles north of Trailhead. Status: presumed deceased. Case closed, October 31st, 1997. Subject entered Harlow Creek backcountry, September 9th, 1997, via permit number HC 3341, issued at Greylock Ranger Station. Final contact: text message to Cal Morrow, brother. September 11th, 1997, at 11:47 p.m. No further contact. Subject did not return to Trailhead by stated return date, September 12th, 1997. Search initiated September 13th, 1997. Recovered: field pack, contents intact. GPS unit, data corrupted. Final logged position within exclusion zone, HCK 7 boundary. Field notebook, see attached. Personal effects: not recovered, remains, partial recovery only. See sealed coroner addendum, GC 1997, C088. Satellite PLB beacon. Subject's boots. Note from search team: lead T. Duval. Recovery was complicated by terrain and text redacted. I am formally recommending closure. I am also formally recommending that the northern exclusion zone boundary be extended and enforced. I have submitted a separate report to the county administrator's office. I cannot in good conscience detail the specifics of that report in this document. Disposition: case closed per county coroner determination. Field notebook submitted to evidence. Photograph, Exhibit 12A. Origin unknown. Found on subject's person. Retained. Greylock County Sheriff's Department. Cross-reference index. The following is a partial list of disappearance incidents in the Harlow Creek drainage area, Greylock County, from 1947 to 1997. Cross-referenced with proximity to geological exclusion. Zone H, CK7. This index was compiled by Deputy A. Foss at the request of Cal Morrow, civilian, December 2nd, 1997, and reflects information available in the public record only. 1947. Lester Crane, age 34, mill worker. Last seen, HCK area, not recovered. Case open and inactive. 1952. Unnamed female subject, Jane Doe, approximately 30 to 45 years of age. Partial recovery only. Identity never established. 1958. Roy and Agnes Hartfield, age 58 and 55. Both disappeared on the same date. Not recovered. Note on file: area informants indicate Hartfields had been seen entering HCK 7 area repeatedly in preceding weeks. No explanation given. 1963 to 1971. 6 additional incidents. All designated probable accident or exposure. Recovery rate: 1 of 6. 1974. 1983. Thomas Vega, age 19, and unknown companion. Vega's boots found at Treeline behind the Morrow property on River Road. Case closed. Notation: boots returned to family per standard practice. Boots had been found on the Morrow porch specifically, placed heel to door. This index is provided for informational purposes. Deputy Foss notes: Mr. Morrow, I've done what you asked. Please stop coming to the office. What you're looking for is not in these files. Signed AF. Thomas Vega's boots had been found on our porch in 1983, 14 years before Daniel disappeared. Placed heel to door, the same way Daniel's boots had been placed. I sat with that for a long time. I called Deputy Foss. He didn't answer. I called 3 more times over the following week. He never answered. I drove to the station. The desk sergeant told me Deputy Foss had transferred to a position in Yakima County. He'd put in for it suddenly, the sergeant said, just last week. I drove home, and I stood on the porch, and I looked at the tree line, and I thought about the fact that my family had lived on this road for 3 generations, and that Thomas Vega's boots had appeared here in 1983 on the same porch where Daniel's boots had appeared in 1997, and that between those years, we had gone on living here. My father cutting firewood, my mother hanging laundry, Daniel and I running in the yard, and the forest had been 50 yards away the entire time, watching us with its green and patient attention, and we had called this home. I went inside and opened the hall closet. Daniel's boots were still there, and beside them, I hadn't noticed before, or they hadn't been there before, I cannot say with certainty, a pair of old work boots, men's size 9, caked with dried mud of a different color than the mud near Harlow Creek, cracked leather, one of the eyelets missing on the left boot. There was no name inside them, just a year, written in black marker on the inner sole, the way loggers used to mark their gear. 1958. I called my father into the hall. I showed him the boots. He looked at them for a very long time. "I know," he said. "You know." "There are others in the attic. There were 11 pairs, going back to 1947, each with a year marked inside. My father knew about all of them. His father had known. His grandfather had known. This was not a secret that had been kept from the county. It was a secret the county had helped to keep. The boots always came back to the Morrow property specifically, my father said, because the Morrows had been among the first families to settle on the Harlow Creek Road, and the Morrow land backed up against the northern drainage and the forest. And here my father paused and looked at his hands and chose his next word with the same deliberateness as Pete Galloway. The forest recognized us. "Recognized us," I said. "Your great-grandfather made an arrangement," my father said. "I don't know the specifics. I know what was passed down. The forest leaves us alone, and we leave it alone, and when it is owed something, it lets us know." "The boots," I said. "The boots are a message, a record. It's keeping count." "Count of what?" My father didn't answer. He went to the kitchen and put on coffee, and after a while I heard him washing dishes, the ordinary sound of water and ceramic, and I sat on the attic floor surrounded by 11 pairs of dead men's boots, and I thought, Daniel's boots are downstairs, and Daniel knew something was in that forest, and he sent me a text message that said, "Found something," and then the forest took him and put his boots on the porch, and we put them in the closet. And that was how it worked in our family. That was how it had always worked, and I was going to stop it, which was, of course, exactly the wrong decision. Greylock County Sheriff's Department. Recorded interview transcript. Subject, Cal Morrow. Date, March 4th, 1998. Officer, Sheriff L. Brandeis. Recording begins mid-conversation, some portions inaudible. Sheriff Brandeis. "Mr. Morrow, I want you to understand that I'm speaking to you as someone who knew your father, who knows the situation on your road. I'm not speaking to you as an adversary. But when you start making formal information requests about active exclusion zones, about the 1974 incident, about the Hartfield disappearances, people notice. People who should not be noticing, notice. Cal Morrow. Who are you worried about noticing? Sheriff Brandeis. There are people in this county who have been involved with what's in that northern section for a long time. Longer than your family, Cal. The Harlow Creek settlement goes back further than most people know. The arrangement your great-grandfather made wasn't the only arrangement. It wasn't even the first one. Cal Morrow. The Groves. What's actually in the Groves? Sheriff Brandeis. Something old. I don't mean the trees, though the trees are old. I mean something that was there before the trees, or that is, present in the trees. The forestry people who surveyed it in 1921, they wrote it down. They said it felt like the trees were observing them. Their word. And at the center, there's a configuration of the oldest ones, the cedar group. And at the middle of them, there's a space where nothing grows. The soil there is. The soil reads wrong in the samples. The carbon dating reads wrong. The magnetometer reads wrong. Everything about it reads wrong. Cal Morrow. Daniel measured one of the trees at 297 years. Sheriff Brandeis. He measured one. But the number 297 isn't an age, Cal. The county's own forestry records, not the public ones, the sealed ones, show that the entity at the center has a rhythm. It has been there long enough to remember things, and it keeps a record. Cal Morrow. The boots. Sheriff Brandeis. The boots are how it communicates with your family specifically. Go home, Cal. Keep the closet. Don't go into the groves. That's the deal. That's always been the deal. Cal Morrow. My brother is dead. Sheriff Brandeis. I know, and I'm sorry. But Cal, what the forest returns, it is not always the thing you lost. Recording ends. Mr. Morrow left the interview at 14:32. He did not return to the department for official business until 2001. The woman in the tree again. I found 3 more photographs in Daniel's materials. In each one, she is in a different tree. In each one, her face is turned away. In each one, the date stamp on the back is the same. September 11th, 1997. The night he sent me the text message. Exhibit 12, A through 12, D. Physical location unknown. Date, September 11th, 1997. The Congregation of the Standing Wood. Founding tenets. Revised accordance, circa 1938. In the beginning, there was the wood, and in the wood, there was the presence, and the presence predated the names of things and the need for names. The settlers who came to the Harlow drainage did not bring the presence. They found it. Some of them ran. Some of them stayed. Those who stayed because the presence let them stay. And in the letting, there was an implied condition. The condition is this: the forest is owed. The forest is always owed. Not because it is cruel, but because it is old, and because the entity at the center of the standing wood, the presence we do not name in writing, the one that stands in the cedar heart where nothing else can grow, it is simply the soil's patience made sentient. Its long, long waiting made aware of itself. She who stands in the wood is not dead and not living. She is what the forest holds. She is the accounting. She is what is owed, taking form. We do not build our congregation from fear. We build it from understanding. What the forest is owed, it collects. The families of the Harlow Road know this, and have always known this. They have made their accommodations. We do not interfere with their accommodations. We supplement them. We provide, on the ordained cycle, every 41 years, the space between the first accommodation in 1916 and the second in 1957. A willing offering, not a victim. We do not offer victims. We offer witnesses. Those who go into the groves with understanding, who see the woman in the wood, who understand that she is the record, that she is the forest's way of showing what it holds. Those who go knowing do not leave behind grief. They leave behind debt. They pay forward. The next cycle closes in 1998. The presence has grown restless. The younger families do not keep the old protocols. The forest has been owed 3 times since 1983 and has collected without formal acknowledgement. This makes it hungry is not the right word. It makes it imprecise. When it is owed and the debt is unnamed, it takes more than it is owed. It overcollects. The boy with the instruments, the forestry student, he named the number. He wrote it down. He thought 297 was the age of the wood. He did not realize that 297 is the head count. The forest requires 297 witnesses before the cycle resets, and the eldest sheds its skin. The boy was the 296th. He understood what the number meant, and the understanding was enough for the forest to claim him. Understanding is the invitation. Do not let the brother understand. I found this document in the spring of 2001, inside a steel lockbox that had been buried under the Morrow barn floor, our barn on our land, since at least the 1950s, based on the rust pattern. It was wrapped in oilcloth. There was a single photograph tucked inside the oilcloth along with the document. A family photograph. The Morrows, circa 1919. My great-grandparents, 4 of my grandparents' older siblings, all standing in front of the house on River Road, all of them smiling. Behind them, at the tree line, barely visible in the photograph's grain, a figure standing in the fork of a cedar tree, arms at its sides, face turned away. Audio file, HCK tape 001.wave, duration 4732, recovered from Morrow property attic, 2001, transcript by Cal Morrow, date June 14, 2001. This tape was found with the lockbox materials. The voice is a man's voice, older. I do not recognize it. Based on the audio quality, I estimate late 1970s or early 1980s recording. The tape had been played many times before, the counter reset, the tape thin with use. Someone had been listening to this for a long time. Voice. I want to say this clearly so that whoever finds this tape, whether your family or not, understands what they're dealing with. The woman you see in the trees is not a ghost. She is not the spirit of someone who died there. She is not a warning. She is a record. The forest keeps her the way we keep photographs. She is what the forest has taken, held in the form it prefers. The form of someone who was there, present, at the moment of understanding. When the boy in 1952, and I won't say her name, she deserves that privacy. When she went in, and she understood, the forest took the shape of her understanding and kept it. It holds her the way amber holds an insect, not dead, not alive, preserved. The Morrow family has a particular status in this arrangement because the original agreement in 1916 was made by Jonas Morrow specifically. He didn't go in. He made the agreement at the tree line. He offered the land adjacent, this property, the whole of the River Road frontage, as a kind of permanent acknowledgement. A way of saying, we know you are here. We respect your accounting. In exchange, the forest agreed not to take from his bloodline unprompted. That's the word he used, in the written copy of the agreement that the congregation holds. Unprompted. The forest will not take from the Morrows unprompted. But the boy, the forestry boy, Daniel, he went in and he understood. That was his own act. The forest didn't take him unprompted. He offered himself through understanding. And now the forest holds him the way it holds the others. And the question I need to be very clear about for whoever hears this tape. The question is whether the older brother knows. Whether Cal Morrow, who has been asking the right questions and finding the right documents and measuring the distance to the tree line every morning from the porch, whether he understands yet. Because if he does, he can never go back. And if he doesn't, he has one choice left. Take the boots out of the closet. All of them. All 12 pairs. Take them to the tree line. Leave them at the edge. Say the name of the one who is owed. Say Daniel. And walk away. And do not look back, and do not go back. And the debt will be acknowledged, and the collecting will stop. Shuffling sound, as of the recorder being moved. This is the only way to close the account. This is the only thing the forest will accept as a voluntary payment that does not require a body. The boots are the record. If you return the record, the account zeros. Tape ends. I listened to that tape 4 times before I got up from the attic floor. I knew the voice. By the 4th listen, I knew it, even though I hadn't heard it in 15 years. It was my grandfather. He had died in 1986 when I was 11, and in my memory, he was a big-shouldered man who smelled of wood smoke and said very little, and sat in the corner of rooms watching doorways. Now I understood why he watched doorways. He was checking what came in. I went downstairs. I opened the hall closet. Daniel's boots. The 1958 boots. 11 others in the attic. I brought them all down. I set them in the hallway. 12 pairs. A congregation of empty shoes. The smell of the closet came with them. Pine resin, loam, and that older thing. Animal, and deep, and patient. My father came in from the backyard and stood in the hallway doorway and looked at the boots and looked at me. I found the tape, I said. He said nothing. You knew. You've always known. Since before Daniel was born, you've known what the forest was, and you let us grow up here, and you let Daniel go in there. He had a permit, my father said. As if that explained something. As if the county's permission mattered against 1,200 years of something old and patient and owed. He's in those trees, I said. The way the woman in the photograph is in those trees. He's in there, and the forest is keeping him. My father sat down on the bottom stair. He put his face in his hands. He was 62 years old. And he looked, all at once, like a man who had been carrying something very heavy for a very long time, and had finally set it down in the wrong place. Take the boots, he said. Do what the tape says. Take them to the tree line and leave them and come home. And that ends it? The account zeros, he said. That's what my father said. That's what his father said. The account zeros, and the forest goes quiet. But Daniel is still in there. My father didn't answer. He didn't answer because there was nothing to say. Daniel was in the trees, the way the woman was in the trees. Preserved. Held. The forest kept what it was owed, and what it had been owed since 1916 was the acknowledgement, the ongoing daily acknowledgement, that the Morrows knew what lived in the groves and respected it and did not go in. Daniel had gone in. Daniel had understood. The debt was paid, in the only currency the forest accepted, a body that knew what it was walking into. I loaded the boots into 2 cardboard boxes. It was a Tuesday in June. I had a dentist appointment the following Thursday that I had been meaning to reschedule. My phone needed a software update. These were the things I thought about as I carried the boxes to my truck. Normal life continuing, the ordinary world holding its shape around a thing that should have collapsed it. The tree line was 50 yards from the back fence. I'd measured it as a child. Ran the number through my head. 50 yards, 50 yards, 50 yards. The way children fixate on proximity to things that frighten them. Now, I walked it in approximately 40 steps. The forest at the edge is not like the forest inside. At the edge, the trees are second growth. Alder and red cedar, 60 or 70 years old. Normal trees, the kind that exist in photographs and nature calendars. The light comes through in shafts. Birds are audible. It is almost pleasant. But even at the edge, you can feel the older thing behind it. Not a sound. Not quite a smell. A pressure, like the moment before a storm when the air goes strange and weighted, like something enormous holding still. I opened the first box. I began setting the boots at the tree line, toe outward, the way you leave shoes when you're about to go in somewhere. The inversion of how Daniel's boots had been left on the porch. The inversion of how all the returned boots had been left. The reversed message. Not we are coming inside. We acknowledge the boundary. 7 pairs. 8. 9. I reached for Daniel's boots last, and I stopped. Because here's what I understood, standing at the tree line with my brother's boots in my hands, the forest enormous and still and waiting behind the screen of young trees. The tape said to say his name. It said to say, Daniel. And if I said his name, the account would zero. The forest would go quiet. It would stop collecting. But Daniel would still be in there. He would be in the trees, the way the woman in the photograph was in the trees. He would stand in the fork of a cedar, with his arms at his sides, and his face turned away. And someone else's brother, in 20 or 40 years, would take a photograph from a distance and try to see his face. And the account would be closed. And we would go back to living on River Road, 50 yards from the tree line. And my father would make coffee. And the dishwasher would run. And Daniel would stand in a tree, preserved like amber, for as long as the oldest cedar stood. I held his boots. I looked at the tree line. I thought about the text message. Found something. Call you tomorrow. He never got to call me. He found something and he understood it. And the forest took him before he could tell me. And the last thing he sent me was a promise he never got to keep. I took 1 step forward. The pressure changed immediately. The birdsong stopped. The light didn't change, but something behind the light changed. It became less like light, and more like the memory of light. Something recorded and played back at slightly the wrong speed. I knew what was happening. I knew that to understand was the invitation. I had just demonstrated my understanding, and the forest had heard it. And the pressure I was feeling was the forest leaning forward, attentive, the way something enormous leans forward when it senses a meal. I put Daniel's boots down, toe outward, at the boundary line. I said his name. I said, Daniel. And then, this is the thing. This is the thing I have never been able to explain to anyone. This is the thing that wakes me up. The forest answered. Not with sound. Not with movement. Something in the deep dark between the trees shifted, and where there had been 1 figure standing in the cedar fork, there were now 12. 12 figures, arms at their sides, faces turned away. All the ones the forest had taken. all the pairs of boots standing at the tree line reflected back at me in their original owners. The woman from 1952, the men from 1958 and 1963, Thomas Vega, who had been 19, and Daniel. There, in the third seater from the left, standing where no one can stand, arms at his sides. I could not see his face. The pressure held for a long count of seconds. Then it released. The bird song returned. The light was light again. The 12 figures were gone. Or they went back to being invisible, which is not the same thing. I walked back to the house. 40 steps. I did not look back. I told myself that was what the account zeroing felt like. That was the forest receiving payment and closing the ledger. I told myself that was closure. I am very good at telling myself things. A woman standing in a tree, arms at her sides, face turned away. There are 12 of them now. There have always been 12. There is a 13th space, 1 seater to the right of Daniel, that is empty. The photograph I found in Daniel's room, taken September 11th, 1997, shows the woman from 1952. It was taken by someone who went in and understood and was taken. Someone the family never reported missing. Someone whose boots the forest never returned. The 13th space, identified 2003, Cal Morrow, private record, Greylock County Sheriff's Department. Incident report. Case number, GCIR 2003-019. Status, open. Date, filed, August 22, 2003. Reporting officer, Sergeant Donna Fenn. Subject, Morrow Calvin James, age 34. Male, white. Property, Morrow. Residence, 4417. River Road, Harlow Creek, Washington. On August 21, 2003, William Morrow, father of subject, age 68, placed a welfare call to the Greylock County Sheriff's Department at approximately 6:15 a.m. Caller stated that subject had not been seen since the previous evening and had not returned from what caller described as an errand at the property line. Responding officer Sergeant Fenn arrived at property 6:42 a.m. Property was found in normal condition. No signs of disturbance. William Morrow appeared distressed, but coherent. He stated that subject had recently recovered a quantity of stored personal documents relating to the 1997 disappearance of Daniel Morrow, and had been in an agitated state for several days prior to disappearance. On the rear porch of the property, responding officer observed 1 pair of men's work boots, size 11, recent wear, laces tied, placed toe to door facing the house, mud on the soles, consistent with the Harlow Creek drainage area. William Morrow identified the boots as belonging to the subject. William Morrow was asked if he wished to report the boots as evidence. William Morrow stated, "No, I'll put them away." When asked where, he stated, "With the others." Search and rescue notification initiated. Standard search protocols for Harlow Creek backcountry per standing department procedure. Exclusion Zone HCK 7, designated off-limits to search personnel per standing county administrator order. Noting officer addendum, Sergeant Fenn. The boots were clean on the inside. No soil, no moisture. The outer soles were muddy, but the insoles were dry and clean, as if whoever had been wearing them had walked a long way in them, and had then simply stepped out of them without removing them conventionally. Without, that is, untying them first. The laces were still tied. I measured the distance from the rear fence to the tree line, 50 yards. I have been a law enforcement officer in Greylock County for 11 years, and I have worked 7 Harlow Creek disappearance cases. I am requesting immediate transfer to another county. I will submit the formal transfer request separately. This is my official record of what I observed, and I cannot explain it, and I am not going to try. Case status: open, active search. Subject not recovered as of date of filing. Attached: photograph recovered from Morrow residence attic, previously entered as Exhibit 12A in case. GCMP 1997-041. Morrow, Daniel. Re-examined per this investigation. Image shows woman standing in tree fork, arms at sides, face turned away. Lab enhancement of current generation imaging performed August 22, 2003. Enhancement reveals there is a second figure visible in an adjacent tree, partially obscured by canopy. Figure is male. Slight build. Standing in the fork of a cedar, arms at sides, face turned away. Figure appears to be wearing a field vest, consistent with forestry equipment. This figure wasn't visible in previous examinations of this photograph. Photograph was taken on September 11, 1997, 2 days before Daniel Morrow was reported missing. The subject's brother, Daniel Morrow, is visible in a photograph taken before his disappearance, in a tree, already there, already turned away. This report is filed as a matter of record. I do not have a recommendation. I want to tell you that I made it back. I want to tell you that I left the boots at the Treeline and said Daniel's name and walked home. And that was the end of it. And now I live somewhere reasonable, far from Harlow Creek, and I keep no hall closet, and I do not notice how far I am from the nearest tree line at any given moment. I want to tell you that. What I can tell you is this. The tape said to leave the boots and say the name and walk away, and do not look back. I did not look back. But understanding is the invitation. My grandfather's voice said so. The congregation document said so. And I understood. I understood everything. I understood the accounting, the renewal cycles, the preservation in the amber of old cedar, the forest's patience, the way the Morrows had been keeping the ledger in a hall closet since 1947, the way my father had known and said nothing, the way Daniel had measured a tree and understood its age, and the forest had heard the understanding and leaned forward. I understood all of it, and I walked back to the house anyway. 40 steps. I counted them. I went inside. I drank a glass of water at the kitchen sink. My father was in the living room, watching the evening news, the television's blue light making him look like something underwater. I said goodnight. I went to bed. I dreamed of standing in a tree. I dreamed that my arms were at my sides, and I was very still. And I could not move my head to look at the things around me, the other figures in the other trees. And somewhere below, at the tree line, a man was leaving a pair of boots. He was saying a name. He was saying my name. And I understood in the dream that I had been there for a long time, that the man below me was someone I loved, that he had come to close the account, that he thought he was freeing me. I could not tell him. I could not turn my head. There were 2 people in that photograph, taken September 11th, 1997. The woman from 1952 was in the first tree. Daniel was in the second tree. Already there, 2 days before he disappeared, already held, already turned away, before his boots came back, before his body was found, before any of it. The forest doesn't take you when you go in. The forest takes you when you understand. Daniel sent me a text at 11:47 p.m. on September 11th, 1997. Found something. Call you tomorrow. He understood at 11:47 p.m. He was already in the tree at 11:47 p.m. He walked through the forest for 2 more days, or something that looked like him walked through the forest, while the real him stood in the cedar fork with his arms at his sides. 2 days of it moving through the woods with his face and his field vest and his forestry instruments, writing 297 years. 297 years. 297 years in his notebook, measuring and noting and documenting the way he would have documented it, giving the forest 2 days of him to study and learn, and then it left the shell of him for the searchers to find, and sent his boots home as a receipt. That's what the forest held. That's what preserved means. I sat with that knowledge in my childhood bedroom on River Road, 50 yards from the tree line, and the knowledge settled into me the way certainty settles. Not with drama, not with anything you could call a revelation, just the quiet spreading of a thing that was always going to be true, always had been true, that was simply waiting for me to be still enough to feel it. Understanding is the invitation. I understood. And the thing I keep coming back to, the thing I cannot stop thinking about, the detail that lives in me like a splinter that has gone too deep to remove, is this. My father went to put the boots in the hall closet, without hesitation, without asking where they'd come from, without calling the sheriff or asking questions or sitting with the grief of it. He went to put them away, as if he'd done it before, as if he'd been waiting for them. The hall closet hadn't been opened in 6 years, I thought, the morning I stood in the doorway and watched my father do it. 6 years of disuse, the smell of pine resin and loam, the hinges without creak, as if they'd been tended. But Daniel had been dead for 1 day, and the closet already had boots in it when my father opened it. I had not checked what was in the closet before Daniel's boots went in. I had assumed the closet was empty. I had assumed Daniel's boots were the beginning of the collection. They weren't the beginning. My father opened a closet full of boots to add 1 more pair. He knew exactly where to put them because he had put boots there before. He had put boots there before Daniel. He had put boots there before my mother left, or before my mother was taken, or before my mother understood, which amounts to the same thing. And she had been gone since I was 15, and I had never wondered, not once, not even in the years of asking questions, not even with all the documents and the transcripts and the tape. I had never once wondered where her boots were. I don't have to wonder anymore. I know exactly where they are. The forest does not want your fear. It does not want your belief. It only wants what it has always wanted, to be understood. And now, you understand. You have been very quiet while listening to this story. Very still. The way you go still when something true reaches you. The question worth asking is not what the forest takes. The question is, what do you now know that you did not know before? Turn around. Look at your door. Did you leave your boots outside?